Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today I want to look into ArgoCD and Helm. So the plan for today, if you've seen my last week's video, I installed the AKS ArgoCD extension, but today we're going to install ArgoCD itself with the Helm Chart. And since this only takes 1 minute, we're also taking a look how to deploy various Helm charts. First we're going to take the Bitnami Redis Helm chart, and afterwards, we're going to create our own Helm chart and us also gonna deploy it. That's already everything I have for the introduction. Let's switch over to the terminal and let's get started. Here in the terminal, before we get started, let's define a couple variables. So I have the resource group name in which I'm going to install my AKS cluster, the location, and the name of the cluster itself. Then we're going to create a new resource group. And after this resource group is created, we are going to deploy our AKS cluster in this resource group. The deployment is going to be as simple as possible. As you can see, just AKS create, the name of the cluster and the name of the resource group. This is going to take around 5 minutes, and once it's finished, we are going to install the ArgoCD Helm chart. The cluster has been created. Now let's download the credentials. Once this is done, we are all good to go to deploy ArgoCD. Let's clean this up. Before we get started, let's create a new namespace. I call it ArgoCD, and then we're going to install ArgoCD in this namespace. Next up, we're going to add the Helm chart of ArgoCD. I already have this, that's why I get this message. And I also always like to do a Helm update. Because I already have the Helm chart, I might have an outdated version. So I do an update so I know I'm running the newest version. Once this is done, we can do a Helm install. I'm going to install a version 8.1.2. As of recording, beginning of July, that's the newest version we have. So let's execute this. This should only take a couple seconds, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, and then we have ArgoCD running. As always, I have all the code you see today in my GitHub, and the link will be in the description. So if you want to follow the demo, you don't have to type anything yourself, so you can just copy and paste it from there. As we can see, the ArgoCD Helm chart is finished, and we have our ArgoCD pods running. Now we have to get the admin password. And once we have this, we can access the ArgoCD UI. There are two different ways how to get it. If you're using Linux, then you can do this in a one-line command. So we get the secret of the ArgoCD, and then we decode it with base 64. If you're using Windows, like I do, we need 2 commands. So first we get the password. Again, we just use kubectl get secret. Once we have this password, we also have to decode it with base 64, and then we print it to the output. So here we have our admin password. I'm going to copy this on the side, and now we have to do a port forwarding so we can access our service and our pod that are running inside the kubectl. Inside the Kubernetes cluster. This will allow us to just use localhost and access the UI. So this is running. Now let's open the browser and let's go to localhost 8080. Then we get an error message because we don't have a certificate, so we just proceed. Then the username is admin and the password is the one we just copied, and we sign in. Great. So it just took us maybe 2 minutes to install ArgoCD with the Helm chart. And now let's take a look how we can deploy other applications using Helm charts. So first, to keep everything as simple as possible, let's click on New App. Then we provide a name for our application. And since I want to deploy Redis, I'm going to name it Redis Helm. Then we have to provide a project name. In this case, I only have the default one, so I select this one. But in the next step, we are going to create a new one. Then the sync policy, I like to set this to automatic and to prune resources and self-heal. This means if you have a Git repository and you remove resources from there, then ArgoCD will also automatically delete them. Then also, most of the time, if not always, select this auto create namespace, although I've had problems with it in the past, but it doesn't do any harm, so I select it. Then we can leave everything as it is for now. Next up, we have the URL to our Helm chart. And we select it's a Helm repository, not a Git repository. The great thing about the UI is it's now checking the URL and figures out all the charts that are behind this URL. If we click on this, we have a long list of Bitnami Helm charts we can easily deploy. Since I want Redis, just search for Redis and select it. Then we also have to select the version on the right side, which is a bit hidden. And if you don't select it, you can't create the project, but you also don't get an error message. So just click on it, then you can see the newest version. I'm going to select this one. Then if you scroll further down, we have to select the destination. That's the cluster we want to deploy this Helm chart. And one great thing about ArgoCD is that I can have it running on one cluster and manage as many clusters as I want. So I don't have to install the Helm chart on the same cluster as ArgoCD is running. For now, I only have this one, so I select this one. And then I also have to select the namespace where ArgoCD is installed. It would be nice if I had a drop down here, but I have to type ArgoCD because that's the namespace where we deployed it first. If you scroll down, then we can see all the values from the values file of the Helm chart, and we can override it there. So for me, that's really great because Helm charts can be quite complicated, especially if you just use from third-party provider, and you have to go into the documentation, check out how to override them, and especially for beginner, it can be quite painful to get started. And here I have a long list of all the parameters that are available. And if I want to change anything, I can just click into it and write the value I want. And also the ArgoCD sorts the values. So all the values I changed are on top. As we can see here, the one I just changed. And then we have alphabetically. So it's very easy to figure out what you changed if something doesn't work. So for now, let's remove this override because I just want to have the default values, and then we're going to create all the way on the top. So our application has been created, and now ArgoCD downloads the Helm chart and applies it in our cluster. If we click on our application, we can see that there's already quite a lot of resources are running, and down here we can see the pod is still starting. So this is going to take around, I think, 30 seconds with the AKS cluster. And I'm going to stop the video here, and once everything is running, we will continue. All applications have been created and the Helm chart is finished deploying. As I said before, I really like this approach because especially for beginner, it's so easy to get started. And I also like it when I want to try out a new Helm chart and I don't know the configuration. So I have a UI where I can just click through it, I can see the different values and I can just try it out. So that's great. But in our real world applications, we don't want to deploy into the default project, and we also want to deploy our own Helm charts. So now let's take a look how this works. First up, we're going to create a new project in ArgoCD. To do this, we click on the left side here on the settings. And then a bit further down, we have projects. There you can see we have the one default one, and then we're going to create a new one. We provide a name, for example, my project, because I'm very uncreative when it comes to this. And now we have to configure the project. And the first time you see it, it might be really complicated because by default, after you created the project, it's not really usable. We're going to take a look at the parameter, and then we'll see why it doesn't work out of the box. So first up, you have to configure what repositories are allowed to use this project. By default, you don't have any. This means if I want to deploy a new project, a new application and select this project, it doesn't have any repositories that are allowed, so it won't work. That's a great option to really limit what applications or what repositories are allowed to use this project. For example, if you have a project that's my website, then I only want to use the repository of my website and not every repository out there. For now, I'm just going to add the asterisk, which means all repositories are allowed to use it. Next up, we have the destination. This says what cluster is this project allowed to deploy to. This again, I can have, for example, I can have different environments like dev, test, prod, and so I can control which cluster I can deploy to. For now, again, I'm just going to use the asterisk. So I allow every server and I also allow every namespace. Next up, if we scroll a bit further down, we have here the cluster resources allow list. Here you can very granularly configure what resources are allowed to create and what resources are not allowed to be created. This could be, for example, I don't want to allow to create secrets because I want to synchronize the secrets from a key vault. To get started, I will allow everything, but I would recommend that after you get it working, you figure out what resources you don't want to be running inside your cluster. So you can either do this with an allow list. So in this case, I allow everything, but you can also do a deny list. So you allow everything except a specific resource. You can do this on a cluster level. So these are the two settings up here, but you can also do it on a namespace level down here. So you have a very granular configuration and can configure each namespace individually. This makes sense, especially if you have a multi-tenancy approach or if you have your environments just separated by namespaces. For example, if you have a dev, test, prod, then you might want to change up what they're allowed to do. So let's save this. That's everything I want to configure for the project. So right now we just allow everything. We allow every destination, every repository, and that's it. Now we can test if our project works. And I also want to deploy my own Helm chart. So let's switch over to the console quickly. I don't want to go into the details what Helm charts are, how they work. So for now, just let's create a new Helm chart by typing Helm create. Then we provide the name of our Helm chart. For example, my Helm chart. And then Helm takes care of this. I already prepared this before, and I already also checked it into my GitHub repository. And we can take a look at this. So here you can see the various YAML file. That's just a default Helm chart. As you can see, it's going to deploy Nginx. If we scroll further down, we can see here we have the type of load balancer. And I think I might have changed this from cluster IP to load balancer, but everything else is just the default Helm chart. I checked it into my own branch. So if you want to follow, I will leave the branch there so you can just copy paste what I do. And now let's try to deploy it. Let's switch back to the ArgoCD UI. We again go to applications, click on new app. Then we provide a new name, in this case, my Helm chart. As project, I can select my own project this time. Now I can configure how I want to deploy it. So I'm going to select the same configurations as last time. I allow prune and self-fill and also auto-create namespace. Then if you scroll down a bit, here we have to configure the source. And I didn't create a Helm chart and push it to a Helm repository. I created a Helm chart and pushed it to my Git repository. So in this case, I paste the Git URL. I leave it as Git. Then with the revision, that's the name of the branch. So by the time you're going to watch this, this will also be in the main branch. So you can leave it as it is. But for now, I have to use my own branch. Then the path. Here you can see already all the folders I have inside my Git repository. And the folder I want to use is the same name as the video. So deploying apps with Helm Charts in ArgoCD. Then the folder is charts and the name of the Helm chart. Then again, we are going to provide our cluster. So that's the cluster we're running on, and ArgoCD is the namespace. And even though we just provided a Git repository, ArgoCD figured out that we are running a Helm chart, and we can see all the values from the values YAML file. And again, if we want to change it, we can just override values. For example, the image pull policy, we can change to always. After we have deployed our application, we should see that it's always. So now we've configured everything, but we have done it in the UI. It's great to figure out something, to get it working, but in the real world, you want to use code. So you could use, for example, the ArgoCD CLI and just provide a file with the configuration. If you click on the top right, edit as YAML, then we can see exactly how such a file looks like. If you open this, we can see here the configuration of everything we just did in the UI. So if you want, you can just copy this file and then apply it via the CLI. That's also a great way to get started. If you have never used it or never tried the CLI before, just click around in the UI, let the UI create the file, then copy paste it and apply it by yourself. For now, I just leave everything as it is, and we're going to create our project. Now you can already see ArgoCD pulled the Helm chart from the Git repository, and it's going to apply it. And actually we already see the application running. Here you can see one pod is running. We have the service. We have here our public IP address. So I'm going to copy this, and we're going to take a look if everything's working in a second. Before we take a look if everything is working, I want to show you something interesting. So let's switch over to the terminal and let's take a quick look at the Helm deployment. Here in the terminal, let's display all the Helm charts that are running in the cluster. So we do a Helm ls -A for everything. If we execute this, we can see it's maybe a bit hard to read, but we only have 2 Helm charts running in the cluster. So first, we have the AKS managed. So that's something Microsoft does. And the second one we have is ArgoCD. So that's when we deployed the ArgoCD with the Helm chart at the beginning of this video. But we can't see our Redis deployment or the deployment of our own Helm chart we did right now. And this is something very important about ArgoCD and Helm. ArgoCD wants to be neutral of all manifest generators. And therefore, it only executes a Helm template, and then it takes all the files the Helm template command generated and applies them. It does not do a Helm install. Therefore, we can't see any Helm charts here when we do Helm ls. Now let's switch back to the ArgoCD UI and test our application and see if everything works as expected. But before we test the application, let's click on the deployment. There we can see the manifest, how it looks like. And inside this manifest, we can look for always. Here you can see the image pull policy is set to always. That's exactly what we configured in the override of the Helm chart. Okay, that's great. Everything worked. Now let's call the public IP. This works because I'm using AKS. And if you have a load balancer service on AKS, Azure also creates a public IP address and assigns it to your service. If you run on Google, on AWS, I'm pretty sure it works the same way. If you run locally, then obviously you don't get the public IP. If we open this, we should get a warning about the certificate. Then we just continue. And here you can see we have our Nginx. This brings us to the end of today's video. As we have seen, installing ArgoCD with the Helm chart is as simple as it can be. You only have to add the Helm chart and then install it. 2 minutes later, you can do a port forwarding to the service and access the ArgoCD UI. Also, after we access the UI, it's very easy to deploy Helm charts. You only have to provide the URL, and then the ArgoCD UI will list all Helm charts inside this URL. It will list the different versions, and it will also give you a list of all the values in the values YAML file, and it will also allow you to override them. Everything can be done in the UI, but we have also seen that you can easily create a YAML file and then apply this YAML file in the ArgoCD CLI. I did not show how the CLI works. If you're interested in this, let me know. I can make a video about it. But we have also seen today how we can create a new project in ArgoCD, how to configure it, even though we just configure it to have access to everything. I think it should have shown you enough to get started by yourself. And then we deployed the Helm chart that was in our GitHub repository. Even though it's not in a Helm repository, we were able to deploy it the same way as we deployed the Helm chart. We have only scratched the surface of ArgoCD so far, but this is my second video about the topic and I still have a lot of fun. So in my next video, I'm going to show you how we can deploy applications that are running in private Git repositories. We're going to take a look how to deploy from Azure DevOps as well as from GitHub. So if you're interested in this topic, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next week with a new video.